It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs, and there you were.
Welcome back, Hour 2 of Where You Live with Gene and Tony. However, we are sans Tony. I'm Gene Sullivan, and across from me today joining me is guest co-host Dan Greenstein from Bernick Lifson. We've got a whole nother hour here to cover with a number of subjects. We're going to be talking in just a moment about this new law in the state of Illinois that says if you are in the association management industry and you're managing a homeowner association, you now must be licensed. What do you think of that? Is that a good idea? We're also going to take a look at a story that comes out of North Carolina, where a homeowner association is saying to the city, this is a private road of ours in the association, but take it back. We want you to take the responsibility. We don't want it. What do you think about that? And then we also, if we have time here, are going to cover a story that we covered a few months ago about the Dolphin Tower Condominium Association in Sarasota, Florida. If you remember, with that association, the board was suing the insurance company because they were not paying on an insurance claim. Well, it looks like the association board has probably won that battle in the most recent court case, but they are now battling with homeowners who are mutinying quicker than anything else, and we'll talk about that as we have time. But Dan, let's talk about this story here from Chicago, from the Chicago Tribune, law to license association managers. It begins by saying, it's official. The long-debated, awaited Community Association Manager Licensing and Disciplinary Act is ready to go. Nearly everyone who gets paid to perform management services for community associations in Illinois after October 1st, 2012, will need a license to do so. I want us to deal with this a little bit, but one thing that caught me was nearly everyone. If this is such a big deal, why is it that there are some people who don't have to? And I guess we'll have to
find out.
Yeah.
But Gene, stop right there for a moment. I am really shocked that in Chicago, Illinois, one of the largest metropolitan cities in our country, up until this year, October 1st of next year, 2012, you could manage these large, very expensive, with a lot of money changing hands, associations, and not be licensed. Well, I'm shocked.
Yeah, I think this is a misnomer. I think that the person who wrote this story, and I think a number of other people are failing to understand what the federal and state law has already provided, and because it's that case, it's because you get the idea here that here are people who have been managing who have not taken this job in a professional way whatsoever. Right. They've not taken classes. It sounds like it's the Wild West.
That it does,
and it's not the case at all. The person who is for this, supporters of this legislation, Dan, said, this will provide additional assurance to volunteer board members and owners that are being serviced with a higher standard of professionalism.
Okay.
Do you think this will give, do you think the fact that you have a licensing, that you have something where someone says, here is the requirements to do that, does that give a higher standard of professionalism, you think?
Well, I think it probably does in the long run. I think that, I'm assuming to with a licensing requirement that's run by the local government, I'm assuming if claims are made or violations of the laws occur by some of these managers, that there's going to be some penalties. There's going to be some way to track those people. And if you're on an association board and you're looking for a new manager, there's bound to be some way that you can go and kind of vet out the managers you're considering hiring.
Yes, that's a good point. And I think there already is. And I think people have failed to take a look at what is already there. So many times when you see new legislation passed, it seems that people don't take a look at what is already there. I mean, how many times have we talked to people who have been a board member and they've talked to you about rules and regulations? And one of the things that you probably do when you are talking to them, when you are counseling them, you tell them, take a look at what's already written, don't you?
Absolutely. Go to your governing documents.
What's in the bylaws? What are in the covenants?
Right.
There's no need to write something that's going to be contrary to something previously written.
That's correct. But this falls back to our previous discussion on what people need to be aware of when they're buying into an association, and they're not really understanding what they're getting into.
Yeah. What I find interesting is the person who's the supporter of this, her name is Beth Lloyd. She's the president of the Association of Condominium, Townhouse, and Homeowners Associations. And she said this will provide additional assurance. But then she goes on to say, right after, this law is good because it's going to give additional assurance to board members and associations. She says, many professionals are licensed. It's not will be licensed. Isn't that interesting? Many professionals are licensed right now, even though this law hasn't taken into effect yet. And she said, we have been surprised that community manager licensing was so long in coming.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it is probably true that anywhere you go, you're going to probably find any kind, some small mom and pop shop where someone puts out a shingle and says, "I can do this work." That's true in just about any profession. But someone who takes what they do seriously and takes a great deal of pride, you're going to see that individual not being driven by the state, but driven by their desire to serve their customer.
That's true.
With being able to become a sharper individual in whatever service they're providing.
Absolutely true. But, it's somewhat like attorneys that also provide a professional service. Attorneys, of course, are licensed. They're self-regulated, very much like this act seems to suggest. But, there's always going to be 5% of the bad apples that seem to spoil things for all the hardworking, honest people. I suspect it's no different with property managers. And if there is an additional avenue or law in place like this act to help weed out the small percentage of bad apples, I think it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I have no problem with the licensing and certifying of property managers. I guess I would make the claim that it is already done, and I'll tell you why. I think that happens when a person becomes licensed as a real estate agent.
Okay.
Both state and federal law certainly seem to understand this and support this idea. It says, let's take a look in Minnesota. And Illinois is really no different. In Minnesota, chapters 82, 83, which deals with the licensing of real estate agents, it says, point blank, right away, right out of the gate, if you are going to sell or manage property for a fee, you're going to get money for it.
Right. You
need to be a licensed real estate agent. And to me, that licensing is a way of indicating that the person has been identified by the state into the industry that they are working. You know where they work, how to contact them. You have a license that they need to apply for and keep current. And if there's any problems, you can pull that license away.
Right.
To me, there's no need to have an additional license just for association management.
Well, that's interesting. I think it's important. The reason I disagree with you is because I think getting a real estate license, at least in Minnesota, does not offer much education or much on the way of ethics of being a property manager. I think being a property manager is a subset of having a real estate license, and I think it's a specialty, and I think it requires additional education and the teaching of ethics.
Okay. And I'd like to pursue that with you. We've got to take a quick break, and when we come back, Dan and I are going to talk about this issue of licensing. Is it necessary? Is it a good idea? Is it overkill? We'd love to hear from you as well, but right now we're going to take a break. We'll be back after these messages.